Okay.
the way I've been.
The family, and you're the matriarch now, and you put everything together. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Barbara, and I like the engagement part between Rosh Hashanah right up through Simchat Torah, how I'm engaged in shul, I'm engaged with my family, I'm engaged with, I find myself more connected. I find myself more introspective. Because I teach in a day school, I have a lot of time, to read and to just have some time to regroup and refresh. And I guess the best word would be engagement.
Okay, good.
I'm Deborah Darvit, and I think that month becomes a place, which is really interesting. And each year it comes around, each year it's different. This time I tried something new instead of always repenting for something. Trying to do it differently before, like the month before. Like just instead of being so crabby or whatever, just working on something.
So you extended your period.
Well, it was more, I was really trying to do it differently so I didn't have to atone for it.
Okay. All right.
It was that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was interesting, and we built a sukkah for the first time in a few years. And so that was great again, just to have that outside.
And the weather was really good for the first half of the holiday.
So unbelievable.
Yeah, it was really, really nice. Be interesting next year when everything is 3 weeks later, what it's going to be like, but
Yeah.
we'll see.
Never know. I'm Fran Chudnow, and what I like about our fall holidays is at least one of my kids comes home for some small part of it. I get to see them. That's nice to do. And this year, for the first time in 27 years, was the first time we didn't have a sukkah. We gave it to a nice Orthodox family because my husband couldn't do the big heavy boards anymore. And I thought, in some way, Sukkot, it's a lot of cooking and a lot of entertaining every night. And I thought, I'm going to certainly not miss doing that. Boy, did I miss not doing that. But it was nice going down to people's sukkahs this year instead of always hosting ours. So, yeah.
Okay.
What about you?
Pardon?
What about you?
For me, my favorite part is, some of you know that we go to Illinois for Rosh Hashanah. And
To be with my daughter-in-law's family.
yeah, with your daughter-in-law's family, and
do remember.
I really enjoy doing that. It's a small shul that opens up just for Rosh Hashanah,
I think that's very nice.
and it's a very special thing. It's like we have a secondary family.
Mm-hmm.
It's a family in Spring Valley, Illinois. So there's there's 4 Jewish families in Spring Valley, one of whom nobody talks to, because you always have to have a family that you don't talk to. And the patriarch of the family, it's his job to make sure that the shul opens up for Rosh Hashanah, and then they bring in people from all around.
And Yom Kippur too, or just?
They used to do Yom Kippur. It was getting too hard for people to come back, because they come in from Chicago and St. Louis and Baltimore and a variety of places. So they all come in and converge.
So this is all people who knew each other and
Mostly
scattered?
it's all relatives. They're all related.
Wow.
So it's the extended family.
Isn't that
Come
Yeah,
nice?
they used to come in from St. Louis, but now those people are in Baltimore.
Yeah, so it's nice. I've been doing it. This is my 10th year,
Wow.
so it's a nice thing.
Very nice. Never knew
And
that.
we are planning on going with them.
Going what?
Yeah. So
It's our Machatanim's family. And one of these years, and I actually have to make our way for Rosh Hashanah with them.
maybe by the time you go, maybe I will have stopped going already by that point. Anyway, this is what we're going to talk about over the next 8 weeks or so. The topic is Jewish family life through the ages, and really what I want to do is I want to take a look at the dynamics and relationships among family members in different periods of Jewish history, to see what life was like then and how life then is different from today, and really get to know how Jews lived. I really like doing things through primary texts, so I like doing for sources. I really want you to get to hear the actors talking as opposed to my talking about the actors. So every week we'll have a series of primary texts that we take a look at. Today we're going to look at a selection from the Torah. Next week we're going to look at a selection from the later in the Tanakh. We're going to hear what the book of Proverbs and Ecclesiastes and Psalms, what they have to say about family life. Then the week after that, the third week, we're going to look at Philo and Josephus and what they have to say about family life, late Second Temple period. Then we're going to get into the Talmud and look at some Talmudic stories. The Talmudic stories will be interesting. It's going to be taking a look at the rabbis in Babylon and the rabbis in Palestine and seeing where they put emphasis. Did they primarily emphasize the importance of study and staying away from their wives for long periods of time? Or did they put primary emphasis on the family and the importance of maintaining family? So we're going to be looking at that. Then we're going to look into medieval times, and then later, a little bit later, medieval times, we're going to look at ethical wills that people wrote and look at family life based upon what the parents tell their children that they ought to be doing and how they ought to behave to their own husbands and wives and their own children. We're going to look a little bit at the diary of Cluckle of Hamelin and see what she had to say about her family life. Then we're going to move much more contemporary Jews of 19th century, and then finally we'll look at issues in contemporary Jewish families. There's supposed to be 8 sessions. I'm not going to be here on October the 26th. Okay.
Where?
So I owe you, so it's October 12th, October 19th, and then there's supposed to be a session on October the 26th.
Oh.
So I owe you a session. So we'll have to figure out where we're going to put that in.
And I know that I already know I won't be here on November 2nd.
Okay.
So,
Neither will I.
But are you saying,
We're just going to be at
this is not
house.
put on here? Or
I
is it put-
I purposely left out
Okay.
26.
the 26th of October because I'm not going to be here.
Okay.
I have to make a trip to Toronto, so
Sorry.
I will be there.
So last session,
Yes, we'll
that's to
figure
be
it out.
determined.
Yeah, so we can add, depending, we can add another session on the first week of December, or we can get together in a restaurant or something the last week.
You can always get here.
Yeah. Just have to figure out what's best for everybody. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sid Blackman.
Sid?
Blackman.
Okay. Hi, Sid. Nice to meet you. Why don't we just go quickly, right, to see who you are?
Sorry.
You're what?
Barbara.
Gotta turn it off, just like in shul, huh?
Exactly. Told me what number.
Okay. Welcome. I was just going introduction to the course and talking about what each of the sessions were going to be. Today we're going to take a look at family life as it is depicted in the Torah. So a couple of things about that. There is no introduction to the Torah that says this is the way family life is supposed to be. There's one other thing I forgot to tell you. So I'm not going to deal with things like marriage and divorce and bar mitzvahs and weddings and funerals, even though that's part of family life. I'm leaving that stuff out. What I'm really interested in talking about is the relationships between husbands and wives, and the relationship between husbands and wives and children, and the relationships between children or among children. So that's what I want to do. So I hope you're okay with that. So we're not going to do anything related to rituals, not for the most part. So there's nothing in the Torah that gives you an introduction that says anything about how a husband and a wife are supposed to relate to each other. There's a couple of phrases here and there, but really not a lot of them. And so a lot of what we have to do, we have to infer from the context. In the later books, there are some statements that say, that children are supposed to honor their parents. So we've got some things like that, but not a whole lot of things. And then also keep in mind that even though we learn these things from the context of the books are narrative. The books are narrative, meaning that some of the stuff may be made up. I mean, it could be narrative fiction and not necessarily the way things actually went on. Could have been the intent of the author that plays out the way the things are. So there's those caveats in there, and that's Lisa.
Hi, sorry I'm late.
It's okay.
What do you want?
All right. So what I did was I pulled. You can see at the beginning. I'll try to go through this reasonably quickly. I pulled some basic principles related to family life, and I pulled it out of an article on family life from the newest version of the Encyclopedia Judaica. So I kind of cut and pasted out of that, and where I had a verse from the Torah that could justify that statement, I put it in there as well. So let's just quickly go through these. So basic family structure, it was patriarchal. So the husband or the father was in charge of the family. It was basically a patriarchal society, and the family was known as a mishpacha, and within the narrower mishpacha, there was the Beit Av. So the Beit Av was more or less the nuclear family. So it was the father and the mother and the children, and maybe the grandparents. But the mishpacha was the broader cousins and aunts and uncles. It's important for you to understand that in biblical, and stop me, by the way, if I say anything that you want to question, please do so. I'm happy to stop. It's important to know that in the Bible, in the Tanakh, the primary criteria for membership was blood, legal ties, and geographical proximity. So you were part of the family if you were a blood member of the family. You're a member of the family if you lived within the confines of the family's tent and the family's area, and you could also be a member of the family if you moved in from the outside. So proximity often determined who was in the family. Yeah.
So would the slaves be part of the family?
Well, the slaves would be. It depends what kind of slaves they were, right? So if they were slaves, if they were so slaves were not members of the family per se, because an indentured slave was often let go after a while, unless he wanted to stay, and then if he wanted to stay, then he probably would become part of the family. Well, let me give you some examples.
You said legal. What would be legal?
Marrying.
Pardon?
What's legal?
What?
You said
Legal ties.
Oh, it says legal
blood,
ties.
legal,
Marriage
or
and geographic.
geographic. So
Oh, marriage.
what's
So
legal?
a legal tie is like marriage.
what's
So if you marry in, you're no longer part of the old family you came from. You're part of the new family. If you become a member within that household, you become part of that family. As far as like becoming Jewish goes, which is part of this, we've had a very different sense of being Jewish because we didn't even have the word Jewish then. So you would become a Hebrew if you became part of the Hebrew unit. So if you moved in, you would become a Hebrew. Eliezer, who was the major domo of Abraham's family, became a Hebrew because he lived within the unit.
So I guess I don't. So are you saying that even if you're a relative, but let's say Lot, who was the nephew, moved away, was he not part of the family?
Well, he wasn't part of the Beit Av anymore because he started his
Oh,
own
okay.
family.
So it's not part of the.
So he was still a nephew, but he wasn't part of the.
Okay, so he's not part of the.
Not part of that unit.
Yeah, the
Okay.
family. Okay.
Right. So in order to be part of the family unit, it was a blood tie living with the family. He was marrying
Okay, so
into
it's
the family.
Okay, I get it.
So had he stayed nearby, he would have.
Yeah, he would have. He would
Okay.
have been in there, and then geographical proximity, meaning like a ger, for instance. We hear over and over again in the Torah about the ger. So the ger is a resident alien. If the ger lives in your family structure, then he becomes part of your family as well. He becomes part of the larger clan of the larger family.
The au pair.
Right. The au pair
But it's
became
not
part
a
of the
legal
family.
tie, it's a proximal tie.
Yeah, it's a proximal tie.
So it could be one of these.
Right. Yeah, it could be any one of those. Also, another thing that tied families together was usually a common profession. So people and families usually had a similar profession. So the people in your family, if one was a shepherd, another was a shepherd, another shepherd. If one was a priest, another one was a priest, another one was a priest. So you had priestly families whose job it was to perform sacrifices. And there were means of showing family solidarity, and one of the most blatant examples of that is blood revenge and redemption of slaves. So what that means is that if somebody happens to kill somebody in your family, then what do you have to do? An outsider kills somebody in your family, then you have to go and avenge that by killing that person. So that shows that the family stands together. Okay, what about the father? The father was the head of the family unit and the owner of the property. He was the chief authority and portrayed as commanding. He was the one who would tell people what to do. Not everybody listened all the time, but he was the one who was supposed to tell people what to do. He was responsible for rebuking the family for doing the wrong thing. So if you remember, Jacob was involved in rebuking his sons for killing the people in Shechem. And he could be merciful, or he should be merciful at times. And this is going to play out in what we're reading in a little bit. His blessing carried legal force with regard to the rights of the firstborn and his privileges. So the patriarch, the father, was responsible for giving blessings, and he was also primarily responsible for giving blessings to the one who was the firstborn and had both the bracha and the bechora. The bracha was the blessing that he was given, and the bechora means the rights of the firstborn. The firstborn child had 2 portions of the inheritance. So if there were 5 kids, there would be 6 portions, and the firstborn would get a double portion of the inheritance.
If they were female or male?
Only
No.
male.
Oh.
If there were no males, then some of the inheritance would go over to the females.
Yeah, but that took a little ways in the Bible before that came to be.
Before they got to that.
Right.
What
The
are we
father
talking
was
about?
involved in the later education of the children. Mother was involved in the earlier education. And the father took his wife from her parents, or she was given to him by her father, or by the master or mistress if she was a slave. So marriage was a taking piece. Okay. And again, the wife would stop being the member of the mother's household and then would move in to become part of. The wife would no longer be part of her father's household, and she would then become part of the husband's household.
With vows, the head of vows, and the father or the husband heard the same thing.
That's right, and we'll see that in just a
It's
couple
an
minutes.
acquisition.
Okay. So if you turn the page over.
So why are we Jewish?
Did you have an extra more of these?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Thank you. And the word for portion of rights was Bechor?
Bechor. Bechor is the firstborn, and
Bechor is the firstborn, or that's the
Bechor
right?
is firstborn, and bracha is the blessing. If you need me to write things down on the board, tell me. You want me to write things on the board? Okay.
So Bechor is the term for the firstborn?
Yes.
Okay.
Bechor. And we'll see that in a little bit. So on the other side of the page, it was normal for the head of the household to have only one legal full-fledged wife. So the ideal was to have just one wife. I would see in the patriarchs that they normally had one wife. But if she was barren, the husband had the right to take a concubine, who was often the handmaiden of his wife. We see that in the story of Sarah, and we see it in the story of Jacob as well.
So that's what I'm playing with right now.
Okay.
So was the concubine part of the family?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
she was.
Right. Yeah.
Sister wife.
Yeah. She was a secondary wife, but she was part of the
And the
family.
reason that she was sent away out of the community, so she was no longer part of the family?
Okay, so that's a great question. So part of what we're looking at tonight is what is normal expectations and what goes on in the stories in the Torah. So the normal expectations are that, just like Bilhah and Zilpah, the secondary wives will be maintained, the concubines will maintain in the family. In Abraham's case, she kicked Hagar out.
Well,
So-
that's what,
right.
exactly, that's what I was looking for.
So she had the
in particular.
right to do that, but that wasn't the normal expectation.
Okay, because Hagar was part of the family.
Right.
And that's what sort of threw me was proximity.
Right.
And adamant that she be
So if
sent away.
you remember the text says the first
I
time.
was looking for it.
Right, the first time she ran away because Sarah was abusing her. The second time Sarah said to Abraham, "Get rid of this woman,"
Right.
and then it says in the text that the whole thing bothered Abraham. So why did it bother him? Because he didn't want to send away a member of his family.
And his firstborn son.
And his firstborn son. So he didn't do it until God said to him, pick yourself up and go. So the ideal is to have a single wife. Often there are second wives, and we also see that people who are people of prestige and heroic characters and people of money, they often had many wives. The best example of that is King Solomon, right, who had hundreds and hundreds, or at least the text says, had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of wives. But David also had at least 4 or 5 wives. So the more prestige you have, the more wives you would have. Okay, so the mother. The senior or sole wife occupied a place of honor and authority. So there's normally either one wife or that there was a senior wife, and she had a certain level of responsibility. At the death of her husband, she would become the head of the household if there were no sons of responsible age. If there were sons who were old enough, then they would take over, but otherwise the mother would be responsible. Something we're going to see in just a little bit is while mothers had power, not all of it was exercised openly. So that's an important piece. So the mothers had a lot of power in the family. We'll see it in the stories. But as we'll see in a little bit, when a male was upset about something and a male wanted to get something done, what would the male do? Pardon? Yeah, shoot him. He would pound somebody out. Okay? He would use physical force to get what he wanted. If a woman in the Bible wanted to get something done, what would she do?
Manipulate her husband.
Yeah, right. She would manipulate her husband, or she would manipulate somebody else. It was really like this.
Right.
So we see through the narratives that there was a lot of power, but we see that it's indirect power. Women knew how to get what they wanted in the way that they needed to have it done, but there was very little direct confrontation. Okay. The mother naturally displayed care and love. The greatest misfortune, we see this over and over again in the text, could befall a woman who was childless. So childlessness was the worst thing that could happen to a woman. That was her main job in life. The mother was more involved in early education of the kids, the father in the later education of the kids, and the mother seemed to be responsible for the daughters until they were married. So mothers earlier, fathers later, daughters were primarily the mothers. And then as far as the children were expected to honor their parents. How do we know that? It says so. And it's usually the rabbi's interpretation, although we're not getting to that in a little bit, but the rabbi's interpretation of honoring your parents was not meant to be little kids honoring their working parents. It was meant to be adult children honoring their aged parents. That was really their understanding of that. So, right. So when parents could no longer function, it was up to the parents to deal with their kids. Where are we? The mother was more, and then, okay, so children, I'm sorry. Honor was reflected in obedience. So how do you honor your parents? You do what they tell you to do. And then if you're not gonna do what your parents tell you to do, what do? What happens? You
Take it to the elders of the village.
right. You have the elders of the town, and then they stone you.
But only the sons.
Yeah.
Korach.
Right.
All right. His kids did not join him in the revolution, if you want to call it that.
Right.
Okay. And in fact, the Psalm for Monday is written by
B'nai Korach.
by
Right.
the Korach, the
Okay.
kids.
Right.
So if we're saying, and they already had at that point the 10 Commandments given.
Mhm.
Okay. So now it's saying they're supposed to honor, but they.
So there's a corollary onto it. This is a rabbinical corollary. The rabbinical corollary is that you are supposed to honor your parents as long as they tell you the right thing to do. If they tell you the wrong thing to do, then you're obligated not to honor your parents. So the sons of Korach were respected because they knew better than to follow their father.
But it was
But
also,
that's a good point.
the whole idea of honor is different than respect. You know, that I found interesting, that honor takes on a different way when you say honor them. It doesn't necessarily mean respect them, but you do what's right.
Right. The Torah has 2 phrases about parents. If your Hebrew is not good enough and you need me to explain it, then just let me know. Okay. So
I
one.
don't know.
All right. So one is in the 10 Commandments, And the Ten Commandments says, kabed et avicha v'et imecha, which means honor your mother and father. And there's another phrase later on that says, ish imo v'aviv tira'u, that a person is supposed to fear his mother and his father. So there's the idea of honor, and then there's also the idea of fear. But fear is more in terms of awe as opposed to pardon?
Trembling.
Yeah, not trembling. Yeah. So it's like Yamim HaNoraim, the high holy days, the days of awe. Are you understand the power that your parents have? But the first one says father and mother, and then the other one says mother and father. So the rabbinical interpretation is that a child is more likely to fear his father than his mother. That's why when it talks about fear, it lists the mother first. So just as you should be fearing your father, you should be fearing your mother as well. And a child is more likely to honor his mother than he is his father, which is why in the Ten Commandments it says father first, to teach you that the child should equally honor his father and his mother. It's funny, I was seeing a family last week in the clinic, and the parents disagree about parenting issues. So often there's a good parent and there's a bad parent. So the bad parent, I don't mean bad by bad parenting. I mean that the bad parent is the one who tells the child when to get up and when to go to sleep and when to do their homework and that they have to finish their supper and whatever else. So the mother was complaining that she's always the bad parent. And the father says, I just want to love my children, and I feel really bad about telling them what to do, and I don't really like to discipline them at all. And so I said, we have to talk about this. But what the Torah is telling us is that the parents have to be respected and feared and held in awe equally, and the parents have to play those roles.
Why was the assumption that mothers are honored de facto and fathers not?
Because mothers generally are the more nurturing, supportive parents. So it was the idea that the mothers would be honored for that, whereas the fathers are more distant and just therefore.
And well, also, since the mother raised the babies and the young ones, they were
The
in
initial connection.
right, the initial connection, and they're taking care of someone who is relatively helpless, and then the father is educating them as they get older and usually correcting them and telling them how to do things.
Mhm.
Then they're and more likely to say, no, you're supposed to go over to that way. And so more of somebody who would be feared that you're doing things wrong, where
All right, so real quickly, parents could sell their daughters in marriage, but not into slavery or prostitution. A father could annul his daughter's vows, and damages were paid to him for a wrong done to her. So if the daughter was raped, then who gets the restitution? The father gets the restitution, because she's now damaged goods and it's harder to sell her into marriage. A widowed or divorced daughter might return to her father's household. We know, for instance, that a daughter of a Kohen who left the family and was no longer able to receive the truma, if she was divorced or her husband died, she could go back to the family and then she could have the truma again. Marriage negotiations might result from an attraction that's already developed between people, but generally the father took the initiative to find the right spouse for his son or for his daughter. Brothers and sisters, this is kind of a funny statement. Solidarity among brothers is stress. If you look through the book of Bereshit, that is not the case. The book of Bereshit has one brother after another fighting with each other, although the optimistic part of Bereshit starts with Cain and Abel competing with each other and Cain killing Abel, but it ends with the brothers all getting along and the brothers learning to get along with each other. So sibling rivalry is not fated. It is possible to overcome it, and by the end of the book, things were doing better. And the term brother can be extended beyond distant relatives. So we sometimes use the word achicha or ach not just your relative, but it could be somebody in your town or your village or somebody who you have some affinity to. All right, so now the fun part. Everybody open up a Chumash and turn to Bereshit chapter 25, verse 19.
I'm sorry, what page?
20, what page? I don't know yet.
Chapter 25, 19.
25.
I don't know if you heard what I said, but every week we're going to look at a different primary source reflecting family life in the Torah. So one of the interesting things about the book of Bereshit is most of the stories
6.
most of the stories in Bereshit are
Oh, no, that's the wrong thing.
that was in the wrong book. Most of the stories in Bereshit are stories not of the functional family, but most of the stories in Bereshit are the stories of the dysfunctional family.
146.
146 sounds good to me. Okay. Actually, do me a favor and go back to 2462. Somehow I left that out. 2462. It's on page 138. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at the story of Isaac and Rebekah and Jacob and Esau. And in terms of everything I rushed through and just in the first part, that's the way families ought to operate. What we're going to see more often than not in this story is that families don't operate the way that they're supposed to in this particular case. I chose this story because it is probably one of the more complete stories that talk about the relationships among the different family members. So we're going to look at this in terms of what they're doing correctly and what they're doing incorrectly. And then ultimately, what we have to be thinking about is if the Torah is a book of ethics and the Torah is a book of telling us how we ought to behave, why do we have so many people in the Torah behaving badly? Okay, why are we reading now about all these people who misbehave? Why aren't we reading about people who behave? All right. So we're going to look at the first part, and I'm just going to ask you to go around and read. If you don't want to read, just pass it on to the next person. I'll tell you when to stop reading. So the first part here is about the meeting of Rebekah and Isaac. So what I want you to think about is what's the nature of the relationship between Rebekah and Isaac? There's many different kinds of love relationships. There's many different reasons why people are attracted to each other. Why? Well, I don't want to jump the gun, but were they attracted to each other, and why were they attracted to each other, and what do you think was the nature of their marital relationship? Okay, you want to read?
Where it says then?
What did we lose?
Huh?
Pardon?
This one?
Where it says, I'm sorry, verse 62.
Isaac.
Isaac. And if you can't read the Hebrew
Wait a
words,
minute. I'm
that's
like-
okay.
Oh, okay, sorry. Isaac had just come back from the vicinity of Beer Lahai
Roi.
for he was settled in the region of the
Okay, so Rebekah is on her way with the servant Eliezer, coming back from her hometown of Haran and making her way over to meet Isaac. Isaac, in the meantime, has gone for an afternoon walk. The weather was nice, and he went for a walk, and he was out walking. The rabbis tell us, by the way, that what was he doing in the middle of the afternoon, taking a walk? He was davening mincha, right? So he was the founder of mincha, and that's what he was doing. Okay, I have a friend who's a Bible scholar. This is totally irrelevant and maybe irreverent to what I was saying, but he says that the word lasuach, that's the third word in Hebrew in verse 63. He says that it has nothing to do with walking. It has everything to do with urinating. And it says that he went out into the field to urinate, but it doesn't read as well. But at any rate, keep going.
And really messed up that whole theory of
Mincha. But okay, keep going.
And Isaac went out walking in the field towards evening, and looking up, he saw camels approaching. Raising her eyes, Rebekah saw Isaac. She alighted from the camel and...
Okay, I'm sorry, stop for a second.
Okay.
So, alighted from the camel. The Hebrew says, "Vatipol me'al haGamal." Alighted is very ladylike. It's like, she just... Yeah, tipol me'al gamal, she fell off the camel. So she saw Isaac and she fell off the camel.
Because
Okay.
she was so stunned with his beauty or something?
Well, let's keep going.
Okay. So she was alighted with the camel and said to the servant, "Who is that man walking in the field towards us?" And the servant said, "That is my master." So she took her veil and covered herself. The servant told Isaac all the things that he had done. Isaac then brought her into the tent of his mother Sarah, and he took Rebekah as his wife. Isaac loved her and thus found comfort after his mother's death.
Okay. So where did he take her?
well,
Into his
mother's tent.
mother's tent.
is mother's tent different than his father's tent?
Yes. So in that society, there was often the patriarch's tent and there was often the matriarch's
So an
tent.
actual physical tent.
Physical tent, right?
Now, was he traveling with his mother's tent?
No, they weren't.
That's
They
their
were
house.
In the
Okay.
vicinity.
They're at home.
Yeah, he was at home and they brought him back home.
Okay.
But his
Right.
mother was dead,
His
but
mother
the tent was still there.
right.
Okay.
So the tent was still up. They didn't put the tent down. Now remember, Isaac was born when his mother was 90 years of age. Remember that Isaac was part of the binding thing where he was tied up and his father tried to kill him. So what's going on
35
here?
or 40, right?
Pardon?
It's like 35 or 40.
He was 37?
According to the Midrash, he was 37 years old. According to the Midrash, by the way, Rebecca here is only 3 years old. But we're not.
That's just wrong.
But that's Midrash. So, what's going on? What's their? What was the attraction here?
Somebody like his mother.
Well, he wanted comfort, and she was more taken with him.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I mean, she's there. It's like she's riding with her eyes low, and then all of a sudden, like something sparks her.
Yeah.
But for him, it wasn't a spark necessarily.
No.
He was in pain.
He needed somebody, he looked at her like his mother.
and wasn't
somebody-
he supposed to be fair of face and,
No, it didn't say that he was. They never said anything about
he
his
wasn't.
face.
Oh,
Not him.
so he wasn't so cute.
No, she was fair face. She was cute.
Oh, she was
but,
a cute one.
But we don't know anything about
He
it.
just was looking for a mother figure,
Yeah.
somebody to comfort him.
Yeah, but she seemed to,
and-
when she fell off the camel.
Because he obviously had a much more intimate relationship, not intimate, but a relationship with his mother and not with his father, especially after his father tried to kill him.
Right.
And so, I think that he was in mourning,
Mm-hmm.
and he just needed comfort. And it says right here, that I think that's why he took Rebecca, because she was there at the moment that he needed comfort.
Right. So he needed somebody to replace his mother, and he was in mourning for his mother. So what? I mean, I know we didn't read the whole Rebecca story, but for those of you who read it before, what was it about Rebecca that was probably particularly attractive to him?
She was kind to she watered all the camels and stuff.
Yeah, she was
very
kind.
sweet,
She watered all the
nurturing kind of
camels.
chick.
Pardon?
Nurturing kind of.
Right. So
person.
she was at least she was nurturing the camels, anyways.
Right.
But she was a nurturing person. What else?
She came from a large family.
Hmm.
Um,
She was assertive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, she asked who is that man?
Yeah, she was an
Right.
assertive female.
to take care of
Right, she
him.
was the one taking care of the camels as opposed to a man, and
Yeah.
so, yeah.
But could take
She
care of
also
him.
told her mother and her
But she-
brother, I'm gonna go.
That's right,
Right.
right. So the mother and the brother said, let her stay a little while before she goes. And then Eliezer says, but I'm in a hurry, I need to get back home. And then they said,
said,
let's
"Go."
ask the girl. And they asked her, and she said, I want to go. She knew what she wanted, she knew what she needed to do, and she did it. Isaac, on the other hand, was a very passive character. Generally speaking, he doesn't take a lot of action. What did he do when they were walking up the mountain?
I was about to say that, because that he had to be privy to the fact that what Abraham was talking about
Right.
and planning on doing. So he had to be very passive in his ideas and his thoughts about, okay, and then allowing somebody to bind you?
Right.
I mean,
Right. And he doesn't say much, right, the whole time. And if we go along with the rabbi's interpretation that he was 37 years old, he wasn't a little kid at that
Yeah,
point when this was
absolutely.
going on.
And his father was not, young, and, it wouldn't have taken much for him to have gotten away from.
His 100-year-old father.
Yeah.
And I hadn't thought about it until now, but he's already witnessed his father casting one son away.
That's right. Right.
So I don't know what the text would say how old Isaac was when he witnessed this, but that's part of his emotional history
Right.
too.
That's
Dad's
right. So-
already
so-
gotten rid of one son.
Right. And so maybe he'll get rid of me too. That's great.
Got rid of one
Use
son,
some
tried to kill
family
me.
therapy,
Yeah,
huh?
the relationship's
Yeah.
probably not the best.
Where was, how long ago did Sarah pass away?
According to the text, she passed away like a year or two earlier. It hadn't been very long
Right,
that she had passed away. There's a couple of really non-traditional interpretations of Isaac. So one of the non-traditional interpretations is that he was intellectually deficient right from the beginning.
The first
And
Down syndrome kid.
so he was the only one of the patriarchs who never had his name changed, right? Abraham had his name changed, and Jacob had his name changed. So there was no what does changing name mean? Changing means you're moving on and moving forward. And he was the only one of the patriarchs who never left the country. He stayed home his whole life. So that's one theory, that he was kind of simple. The other theory is that he was traumatized. That he was he was suffering from PTSD, and he never really got over that. It's interesting that in 2 weeks, when you're in shul, if you're reading the story of the binding of Isaac, you'll see that somebody doesn't come down from the mountain. Do you know who doesn't come down from the mountain? Isaac doesn't come down from the mountain. It says at the end of the story that Abraham came down and he met the servants, but we don't know where Isaac is. And so one possibility is that he was really pissed with his father, and he just didn't want to walk down the mountain with his father. The rabbis don't say that. The rabbis say the father realized that he needed an education. They sent him off to yeshiva,
Yeah.
and that's
He
why
went
he
to the
came down.
yeshiva in the sky.
Yeah, but there was a lot of baggage, if you think about
Well, he was also bullied by Ishmael, if we believe anything that Sarah said. That
Bullied or other things.
Right, by
that-
bullied or other things.
Right. That he was traumatized then, and
So here was somebody who should have been, according to our little sheets here, should have been the patriarch of the family and the leader of the family and the strong one of the family. But he probably never was the really strong one of the family, but the one who really pulled the strings was Rebecca, because of Rebecca's own background and her own assertions and her own ability to get things done. By the way, we'll see in a little bit that Rebecca, I told you that Rebecca does things behind the back and with trickery, but keep in mind that she comes from a home where trickery was the norm. She came from the home of Laban, where Laban tried to do that whenever he could, so she came by it honestly. All right, let's move forward a little bit and take a look, page 146. And I want to focus on, so starting a family, so she wants to be pregnant. I want you to think about the difficulty of childlessness, difficulty of pregnancy, and what Isaac's role is, what Isaac's role here is in being supportive or non-supportive of his wife. Barbie, you want to read?
This is the story of Isaac, son of Abraham. Abraham begot Isaac. Isaac was 40 years old when he took his wife Rebekah, daughter of Bethuel the Aramean, of Padan Aram, sister of Laban the Aramean.
Right.
Isaac pleaded with the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was barren, and the Lord responded to his plea, and his wife Rebekah conceived. But the children struggled in her womb, and she said, "If so, why do I exist?" She went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord answered her, "Two nations are in your womb. Two separate people shall issue from your body. One people shall be mightier than the other, and the older shall serve the younger."
Okay, let's just stop there. All right, so we talked about before about the importance of pregnancy, and she had a difficult time conceiving. So what's Isaac's role in this?
He goes to God.
Well, so we don't see him. We don't see him.
She went,
He doesn't give her a hug, but what does he do?
says he pleaded.
He pleaded with the
prayed.
Lord on behalf of his
Right.
wife. So let's see. He prayed, and he prayed to God and say, "Please help her." And it doesn't say he didn't plead. It doesn't say he pleaded for himself. He said he pleaded on behalf of his wife so that she would get what she wanted because she was barren. And the Lord did respond to his plea. So he does appear to be sensitive as far as that goes. And ultimately she does conceive. And then when she's pregnant, what's going on? She's having a really, really difficult pregnancy. It's very, very hard on her. So she is the only one of the matriarchs who God talks to. Okay, God talks.
I was gonna
That's
ask that
it.
question.
Well,
Theoretically, who's in a dream? How does God communicate with her?
So often in the Torah we don't know. We don't know exactly how he communicates. It says
So the angels don't.
it says in this case that okay. If you look at verse number 22, let me just do the Hebrew.
Specifically says,
Let me
answered her.
Vayitra tetsu habanim b'kirba. So the children were really moving around in her womb. Vatomer im kein lama zanochi. And it's just, if my pregnancy is going to be like this, I might as well die. She was having a really, 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 really difficult pregnancy. It was very, very hard on her. If she had been living today, they probably would have told her to be put on bed rest or have a C-section or both, because she was having a really, really difficult time. And then it says, Vatelech lidrosh et Adonai. That's the part I want to point out. So she went to search out God. So the term going out to search out God probably means that she went to a soothsayer of some kind or other. So she went to somebody who would tell her what God had to say. It doesn't say exactly what the soothsayer was, or it doesn't say, if she used chicken bones or whatever it is that she was using, but somehow she tried to find out God's will. But God responded to her.
I was just going to
And-
say, it specifically says God answered her.
Right. God answered her. God never spoke to Sarah, only spoke through Abraham. God didn't speak to Rachel, didn't speak to Leah, didn't speak to the concubines, only to her, which
Spoke
tells
through
you,
angels.
which tells you something about the strength of the woman and her own convictions and her relations. And in this case, so in Abraham's case, when Sarah was about to become pregnant, who did God tell? God told Abraham, right? And then Abraham was supposed to tell Sarah. Here, there's no discussion with Isaac at all. The discussion is all through
But I wonder
Rebecca.
if that goes back to what the rabbis say or what the text says about Isaac's weak character. And like Isaac as a boy and with Ishmael, and then you move forward and you read some of the text and it says there was funny shenanigans going on, and then you go back with the binding and you wonder if there was not, and then you brought up the idea that he never had his name changed, he never left the land, that maybe there was a mental deficit, and so God had to do what God had to do
Yeah,
and go through.
Contrary to being the strong patriarch, I think he was a weak character, and in this particular case, Rebecca had to pick up the slack in this biblical family. All right, I want to show you something that I think is cute. We're just going to skip and then we're going to go back again. So go to chapter 26, verse 7.
Boy, I remember practicing this with one of my sons for a year.
Okay, so let me tell you what's going on here. By the way, another thing that shows you that Isaac was not a particularly strong patriarch was that most of the things he did were mere repetitions of what his father did. We see in this particular parsha that he spends most of his time uncovering the wells that his father had built, that his father had dug. We also see that just like his father ended up going into foreign territory and having to call his wife his sister, Isaac did exactly the same thing, which is what this little story is here. So this little story tells us about his coming into Gerar and ending up telling the head of the king of Gerar that his wife was his sister. And then we'll see in a second. We see something in here about the marital relationship. We have a little window onto intimacy that we don't normally see in the descriptions of the families. So, Lisa, do you want to read?
Yeah, which verse?
6.
So Isaac stayed in Gerar. When the men of the place asked him about his wife, he said, "She is my sister," for he was afraid to say my wife, thinking, "The men of the place might kill me on account of Rebekah, for she is beautiful." When some time had passed, Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looking out of the window, saw Isaac fondling his wife Rebekah. Abimelech sent for Isaac and said, "So she is your wife? Why then did you say she's my sister?" Isaac said to him, "Because I thought I might lose my life on account of her." Abimelech said,
Okay, so you can stop there. So you know what happens then. Everything gets reconciled. So I put down in my little outline here, I put down "get a room" as this section here. So what are we seeing that we don't normally see?
"Playing with it."
They're not playing checkers.
Sexual activity?
Yeah, it's sexual activity. Right. I
As
think.
opposed to just taking her to the tent and we have to just imagine.
But it's interesting that it's mitzachek, that it's playing. I mean, it's Isaac's name, and it harkens back to half-brother.
Right, so it harkens back to Ishmael where the
Yeah.
same thing was happening. So there's an interpretation that Ishmael was engaging when Isaac was little in some kind of sexual activity, that the word mitzachek is not just playing cards. Yeah, that there's something else to it. But
That counts for the
What other word
mental.
could have been used instead of one tied to Isaac's name? Would there have been one?
I mean, they could have been more, well, I mean, if they're having intercourse, they could have had a more graphic thing, or they could have used the word yada, which means to know, which could be, but for
they
just
use
kind of,
that, though.
for just kind of fondling or sexual play or sexual teasing, I'm not sure of another word that they could have used. But, yeah, it has something to do with his name as well, so it's a repeated thing. But I like it because it's one of the few places in the text, in the Torah, where we see something beyond the formal back and forth discussions, and they married and they begot kids. But here's just a normal part of life, and they were trying to hide it, but they didn't do a very good job hiding it. So it's, I think I see that as a positive part of their relationship. Okay, so turn back to chapter 25. And verse 27 through 34. Okay, so this is what we're going to do for the remainder here. I want you to pretend that you have a buzzer in front of you, and the buzzer goes, eh. Okay? Whenever we come to a portion here that you think is dysfunctional, that's showing elements of a dysfunctional family, press your buzzer. Okay, now, all right. Sid, Lisa, you read already, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Sid, do you want to read? We're chapter, page 147, verse 27.
When the boys grew up, Esau became a skilled hunter, a man of the outdoors, while Jacob was a mild man who stayed in camp. Isaac favored Esau because he had a taste for game, but Rebecca favored Jacob.
Okay.
I mean, favoring him for a taste of game.
All right. So what's going on here? Jacob or Isaac favors Esau because of what? What does he do?
He kills and cooks.
He
Goes
kills and
outside.
cooks. He is a jock,
Yeah.
right? He's a hunter and a jock and macho. Esau is everything his father is
Right.
not. And so he favors this kid who is the powerful, who he perceives to be the powerful, heroic character. But Rebecca favors Isaac. So there's two things. One, he's favoring Esau for all the wrong reasons. But what else is going on? You know, one of those things they tell you not to do as parents. Playing favorites. Yeah.
But
Although
they both
so was she,
did.
yeah.
They both
Yeah,
did.
no. So I'm not saying him. I'm saying they. They as a couple are playing
Right.
favorites here. So we can see it's already going to lead to problems. It's interesting that the rabbis spend a lot of effort into trying to defame Esau and turn him into a villain. So they say, what does Esau do? He says Esau spends a lot of his time praying to idols and worshiping idols and sacrificing to idols, and only pretends to his father that he's an okay character, because they want to raise Jacob's prestige and lower the prestige of Esau. Okay, let's keep
That's
going.
really reading between the lines.
Right. Okay.
Let us make something up.
Okay, keep going.
Once when Jacob was cooking still, Esau came in from the open famished. And Esau said to Jacob, "Give me some of that red stuff to gulp down, for I am famished," which is why he was named Edom. Why would that be?
Because the Hebrew word for red is Adam,
Right.
and
Oh.
the nation was Edom. So they're saying the nation that he was the founder of, Edom, was because he wanted to eat that red stuff.
Or was it the fact that since he was out in the field so much, his complexion was red?
And so that was the other part of it too, is he was born, when he was born, he had a ruddy complexion. So that was another reason why he was called Edom. So two reasons.
Jacob said, "First sell me your birthright." And Esau said, "I am at the point of death. So of what use is my birthright to me?"
Okay, so anybody pressing buzzer yet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he couldn't have
I mean,
been.
he's hungry. How much?
He was just hungry. It wasn't the fact of that he was ready and eaten for days and days, and so he was missing a meal maybe.
But
Uh-huh.
Jacob was awfully snarky, and
Yeah,
I'm
so-
not going to feed you till I get your birthright.
The brothers are supposed to get along. We talked
Yeah.
about that. But what's going on here? Jacob is playing on the weakness of his brother Esau. Jacob knows that his brother is hungry. Jacob knows that his brother, his brother is simple. Esau is simple. He's hungry, so what does he want to do? He wants to eat. He's thirsty. He wants to drink. That's what he wants to do. And he's being, so Jacob's saying, this esoteric thing, the birthright, if you sell me the birthright, I will give you this concrete thing that you want. He wanted a concrete thing. That's all he wanted. The birthright meant nothing. So the birthright, like I told you before, was the right to receive the inheritance.
But also, you look at Jacob, who, I don't want to say feeble, but weak, who chose to nurture Esau, but what did Esau get from that relationship? And then you look and just using your little key here, and how you said that the mother is the nurturing one, the mother's the loving one, and that's what Jacob was getting. So even the whole, the mother, pulling the strings from behind, with Jacob, teaching him to be shrewd, teaching him to work the circuit,
Yeah,
to
right.
manipulate his environment. And Esau didn't have that because Jacob was, I think, benign in terms of
being able to give
Okay.
much.
So Asaph, as strong and macho and ruddy and hairy as he was. That, by the way, if he had been brought up in North America, Asaph's name would have been Harry, right? Because basically that's what they called him. They called him the hairy one.
Well, and at this point, I mean, I don't know how old they actually are, but in biblical times, since people's age doesn't seem to have anything to do with the ages we are now, they seem like they were both more teenagers.
Yeah, and he was old enough to cook without supervision.
Right, and teenagers, I mean, I want what I want and I want it now. And so, he could, and so Jacob could say, well, okay, I'll trade you, you got to make my bed for 3 years and I'll give you a bowl of soup.
And Jacob knows how to play the game. Asaph doesn't.
And Jacob was it wasn't just give me the birthright, but sell it. I mean, it was this
Right.
contractual
Right.
and then swear to me.
That's right.
He wanted this airtight.
Yeah, and Jacob knew exactly what to do. He knew the system.
And obviously he was kind of taught how to do this.
Right. So if we were to take a look at at Asaph from a contemporary clinical psychological perspective, Asaph was probably the first person in the Bible to have ADHD. Okay? He was impulsive. He wanted what he wanted when he wanted it. He was easily frustrated. He couldn't wait for things. So let me read you here. He says, Jacob said, sell me your birthright. And how does Asaph respond? He says, I'm at the point of death, so what use is my birthright to me? I'm so hungry I could die. I can't wait another 10 minutes. I have to eat right now. I can't go into my father's tent and get a bite to eat there. I have to eat now because I want it. And Jacob said, swear to me first. So he swore to him and sold his birthright. And then Jacob gave Asaph bread and lentil stew. And then my favorite part is, he ate, he drank, he rose, he went away. Right. So what did he do? It was a boom, ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. It's even better in the Hebrew. The Hebrew is in the last line, it's vayochal, vayesh, vayakam, vayelech, vayives. Just ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. This is kind of impulsive action without giving any thought whatsoever to the implications of what he did. Does that make Asaph a bad person?
No, it makes him a teenager.
Right. Makes him a teenager or a person with a particular
It's
character.
just awful.
Or the fact is that he could care less. He doesn't talk to them at this point. We don't really know how old they are. Okay.
Right.
And the question
He
is.
can be 50.
No, because they don't have.
He's old enough to go out to hunt.
Right.
Well, yeah, but, because that's basically teenager or whatever. But then they don't talk at this point that neither one is married, okay? So they are in their teens or early 20s, okay? And Esau at this point can care less about his inheritance.
Mm-hmm.
He's just interested in doing what he wants to do and go out and do whatever.
Right. The intent of the text, I believe, is to show us that Asaph was not worthy of receiving the birthright, and that Jacob was worthy of receiving the birthright. My read on it though, is that Asaph got a bad rap.
Asaph got it.
Yeah, are you worthy of something when you finagle it to get it?
I was gonna say
Does that make you worthy?
Yeah.
But, somebody who only lives for today, which is what Esau seems to be, he can't think down the road. The birthright to him means nothing because, eventually Dad'll die and I'll, want to get this stuff. But he doesn't care about that because that's there, and I want what's now, and I want here, and so, and Esau Jacob can see that there's a future, and he wants his portion of the future.
So if we look at the four sons from Pesach, so Asaph is probably the tum.
The simple.
He's probably the simple son.
Right.
The question becomes,
Is
Jacob.
Jacob the wise or the wicked? Is he the wise or the
which
wicked?
Jacob? Is Jacob the wicked, or is Jacob the wise one? And I have to put a proviso on this. So whatever you're hearing tonight is really Torah from Mitch. Okay, so if you go to an Orthodox rabbi, you're going to hear a very different story of how to understand it. I'm going to tell you a punchline now, just to make sure I don't forget to tell you later on. Is that, I mean, you all know that Jacob ended up getting the blessing, and he ended up getting the birthright, and he ended up tricking his father, and tricking his brother, and then he had to run away. So
And then he gets tricked.
the short-term question is that it doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem right that Jacob should be named the patriarch after having cheated his way through, even if he was only following orders, right? But so what we see is the Torah has a strong sense of what goes around comes around.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so that Jacob is the only one of the three patriarchs who, before his death, is not said to have had a long and fruitful and benevolent life. Also, just as Jacob cheated or tricked his father for the rest of his life, he was tricked,
Right.
and he was tricked by others to his detriment.
By his father-in-law's children.
Right. Yeah.
his
Over.
spouses.
Right. His spouses. Over and over and over again, he was tricked. So what he did, many times over, happened to him. So the Torah is showing that even though he was the patriarch, there are still consequences to these actions. So, or another way of looking at it is that even though he was fated to ultimately get the blessing, even though Rebecca knew that he was fated to get the blessing, he didn't have to do it the way that he did. The free will is in how do you go about doing what you need, even though you know what's going to happen. I think the Torah is telling us that the means don't justify the ends don't justify the means in this case.
Why did
Yeah.
Jacob have to trick his father if he bought the birthright sort of fair and square from his brother? His brother
Because
just to get
because
him.
apparently they didn't tell anybody else. It was something just between the two of them.
But couldn't he have told his dad? and
He
said,
could have.
"I got
Okay.
it from-"
All right. So you're the psychologist. So what's going on here?
I'm psychologist.
Yeah, just about. Just about. There's no communication.
Right.
So
And what an awful thing to confess to your father.
Right.
I tricked your favorite son.
that's right.
He bought it from his brother. His brother chose.
But there was no
to give it to
signed
him.
contract.
You know, it's sort of
I mean-
like when an older brother, just, the little brother has a quarter and the big brother has a shiny penny. And,
Or a
oh, I'll
nickel,
trade
give
it,
you, 'cause the
look,
nickel's
mine
bigger
is so
than a
big
dime.
and yours is so little kind of thing. And at some point, the mother steps in, or the father steps in and says to the older son or daughter, are you doing the right thing? Is it fair to do that? And that's what's so nice about the Torah, is that we are we're learning from people that have flaws.
Okay. So we'll go back to the text in just a second, but I want to follow up on what you were just saying, because that was one of the questions I asked at the beginning. Why do we have all these dysfunctional families in the Torah? Why don't we have just really perfect people doing perfect things? So number one, I look at the book of Bereshit especially as case studies. Right? So each of these studies tells us about how a family operates, and they're not superhuman families, they're normal families. They're normal families who do some right things, and families who do some wrong things, and do some really great things, and really do some things that are screwed up. But they're like us. We talk about our own families. We all have things in our own families that are really crummy. I'm not asking you to talk about tonight. But we all have that stuff. But we read this book, and what we should learn is what the right way is doing by seeing the people do it the wrong way, but also to see that they keep persisting and they keep trying.
Well, it's sort of nice even, to pull it from this week's Parsha, or last week now, when God creates man. It's the only time he doesn't say, it's good.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. We'll see how it comes out.
He creates,
Right.
creates water, flower, trees, animals, and he always says, it's good.
Right.
But when he does man, he doesn't say that we're created good. He's everything that he created.
Everything. Yeah. Although at the very end of creation, he does say everything was really good. When he was totally
Not us,
right, not,
he didn't-
not us in particular.
And that gives
And then how
us-
long did things stay good? About 2 seconds. And then they screwed up.
But it
Okay, we
gives
don't have a lot of
us-
time left, so I want to show you 2 more things, and then we'll tie it up. So turn to chapter 27. Okay, we have a series of little scenes here. You can almost look at this as a play. So picture to yourself that you've got a stage and you've got the actors coming on to the stage. In any one of these scenes, there are never more than 2 characters on stage at a time. And it isn't until the play is almost over that we have Isaac and Rebecca on the stage at the same time. Okay? So we have Isaac and Esau, and we have Rebecca and Jacob, and we have Jacob and Isaac, and then but the 2 parents are not on stage at the same time. So what is that suggesting?
Really dysfunctional.
Yeah, very, very dysfunctional. No,
Just as
yeah.
divisive as what happened with Abraham and Sarah and Isaac.
Yeah, right, doing their own thing. Although at least with Abraham and Sarah and Isaac, they were on the stage at the same time, and they would talk. May not be it may not be the most constructive talk, but at least they would talk. Here, there's nothing. So let's just keep our buzzers in mind, and let's just read through a little bit of this.
When Isaac was old and his eyes were too dim to see, he called his oldest son Esau and said to him, "My son," he answered, "here I am." And he said, "I am old now, and I do not know how soon I may die. Take your gear, your quiver and bow, and go out into the open and hunt me some game. Then prepare a dish for me such as I like, and bring it to me to eat, so that I may give you my innermost blessing before I die."
Okay, so now we're finishing scene 1. Okay, keep going a little bit further.
Rebekah had been listening as Isaac spoke to his son Esau. When Esau had gone out into the open to hunt game to bring home.
Okay, stop for a second. So picture the play. Okay, so picture this drama here. So we've got Isaac talking to Esau. Where's Rebecca?
Off stage listening.
Listening.
Yeah, so she's just a little, but you can still see her.
Yeah.
Okay, she's still listening. In today's world, she would have had the baby monitor on, and she'd be listening
But this
to
is
what
a tent,
was
so.
going on. Right, but she's using whatever power she has in order to do what needs to be done. He doesn't talk to her to say it's time for me to give the blessing, but he has to find out about it. Or she wants to find out about it. The only way to do it is by listening, by eavesdropping. Okay, keep going.
Let's see. Rebecca had been listening as Isaac spoke to his son Esau. When Esau had gone out into the open to hunt game to bring home, Rebecca said to her son Jacob, "I overheard your father speaking to your brother Esau, saying, 'Bring me some game and prepare a dish for me to eat, that I may bless you with the Lord's approval before I die.' Now, my son, listen carefully as I instruct you. Go to the flock and fetch me 2 choice kids, and I will make them a dish for your father, such as he likes. Then take it to your father to eat, in order that he may bless you before he dies." Jacob answered his mother Rebekah, "But my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I am smooth-skinned. If my father touches me, I shall appear to him as a trickster and bring upon myself a curse, not a blessing." But his mother said to him, "Your curse, my son, be upon me. Just do as I say and go fetch them for me."
Okay, so we should all have our buzzers really buzzing really, really hard at this point. Okay, so what's she doing? She's undermining the father. She's teaching him to trick. She's teaching him that the ends justify the means.
And also she's saying, "I overheard your father speaking to your brother," not "I overheard
Good.
Dad speaking to Esau," or "I overheard my husband speaking to my other
Okay,
son."
so we're really splitting.
Like she's not owning them at all. It's all, she's absenting herself with the pronouns she's using.
That's right. Good point. I mean, how often,
Your son did
yeah,
this.
that's
Who
right.
wrecked the car? Your
Yeah.
son.
Your
You know
son.
what your son did today.
Maybe
That's
they
right.
know.
That kind of
That's
a-
right. Yeah.
It's interesting though. that
Yeah.
you-
Good. Yeah.
yours.
And it's that way in the Hebrew?
Avicha, kasher,
Yeah.
v'idala avicha.
Yeah, Avicha, all right.
Yeah. And another fascinating point here is in verse 13. His mother said to him, "Your curse, my son, be upon me. Just do as I say and go fetch it." The Hebrew is alai kilalat chabani. So if Dad finds out and Dad knows what's going on, then I'm going to take responsibility. So don't worry about it. Nothing bad will happen to you. Everything is fine. I will take total responsibility for it. So flip to.
But it says, but the kalal, the curse, but not the blessing, right? Kalala velo bracha.
Yeah. So the.
Oh, you're not the blessing. Okay, there it is. All right, that was one
Okay.
chapter, one verse.
But, and
Okay.
she's technically saying, don't worry, I can deal with Dad. I can deal with Dad.
Mhm.
So she has some type of relationship, where she can still manipulate him if necessary.
Right. Okay. Let me just find the verse that I want to look at.
So on verse 19 of 156, it
Mhm.
says, Jacob said to his father, I am Esau, your firstborn.
Right.
Now, he is theoretically, because he bought the birthright, he is theoretically
Right.
the firstborn
Mhm.
to get the blessing, but he's lying in fact saying who he is.
Right. And the rabbis who try to make it look good put commas in there. So it is I, Esav is your firstborn. So they changed the words around a little. They changed the structure of the sentence around a little bit. Okay, turn to verse 41. I'm skipping the middle. You know the middle, but we had a lot of time we could look at it. But this is afterwards. So Esav knows what goes. Esav knows what's going on, and Isaac knows what's going on. Everybody, and Rebecca knows what's going on. And in verse 41, actually, Fran, why don't you read?
Now Esau harbored a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing which his father had given him, and Esau said to himself, let but the mourning period of my father come, and I will kill my brother Jacob.
Okay, so he's angry. Okay, is that dysfunctional? No, he deserves to be angry. And when you're really, 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 really angry, what do you say? I wish
I'm
he
gonna
were
kill you.
dead. I'm going to kill you. So it's a typically normal. You okay?
Yeah.
Okay, it's a typically normal reaction to what's going on. And then, okay, keep going.
When the words of her older son Esau were reported to Rebekah, she sent for her younger son Jacob and said to him, your brother Esau is consoling himself by planning to kill you. Now, my son, listen to me. Flee at once to Haran, to my brother Laban. Yeah, that's a good idea. Stay with him a while until your brother's fury subsides, until your brother's anger against you subsides, and he forgets what you have done to him.
Okay, stop there. 2 pages earlier, he said, what's going to happen? And she said, if anything bad happens,
I'll take
it's
responsibility.
all me.
Go away.
It's all me. And then what does she say here? And he forgets what you have done to him. So whose responsibility is it?
Still his.
Right.
It's his responsibility.
right.
The mother, the loving mother, right?
But she consoles, though, the father. Okay. Because in reality, she tells, he finds out what it is, and the mother says, I'm sending Jacob away, and she's consoling him in some way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so she is trying to find a way to
To console Isaac.
to console Isaac, but also to ease the situation by getting Jacob out of the situation and sending him off to summer camp for the summer so he can be away, or sending him off somewhere else. Okay.
There's something interesting about, because how we talked about Esau only being very precipitous and give me the food now. But then he says, let but the mourning period of my father come, and I will, it's like all of a sudden he's gotten a little bit of patience.
Mm-hmm.
And, not just I'm going to kill him right now, but I'll wait until this happens.
Or
Okay,
he could-
just take a
could
look
be
at
afraid that
yeah.
the fact that if he were to kill his brother, okay, he would be, quote, excommunicated or something else.
Well,
from
No,
the
it would go
family.
back to somebody would have to avenge his death, or
Well,
avenge the father's death and kill him.
his
so-
father isn't dead yet at this point.
No, so
So-
he's just really angry, and he's not thinking
Right,
about
right.
not thinking about the consequences at all. He just knows that he wants to do away with his brother. Just go back to verse 34 for a second. It's really poignant. Isaac tells Esau that he's already given the blessing to Jacob. And then it says in English, when Esau heard his father's words, he burst into wild and bitter sobbing. And he said to his father, "Bless me too, father." But he answered, "Your brother came with guile and took away your blessing." So, I mean,
It's one of the most tragic lines, I think, in
yeah,
Torah.
it is. It's a really difficult. You know, when you read Torah, you're not supposed to put any emotion into it. You're just supposed to read it and do the trap. But whenever I have the opportunity to read this, I kind of just change it a little bit because it's such a poignant thing. He's heartbroken. I mean, it's really, really sad. Okay, so let's just finish with one last thing. So here we're dealing with, we're talking about families and issues related to families, and this is an issue that we continue to deal with today, and this is issues related to intermarriage. So this is the first incident of parental concerns about intermarriage in the Bible. Esau has already married a Hittite woman, and his family has not been happy with the fact that he married a Hittite woman. And so let's take a look. This is the first time in our whole little series here where Rebecca and Isaac are on the stage together. Okay? Rebecca said to Isaac, "I'm disgusted with my life because of the Hittite women. I don't want to have this non-Jewish woman married to my children. It's not part of the clan. She's an outsider. It's really bothering me. If Jacob marries a Hittite woman like these from among the native women, what good will life be to me?" So what good will life be if you continue to marry these Hittite women? Part of the problem, by the way, with marrying Hittite women is that you are diluting the gene pool, and so whatever land God gives is not just given to the native Israelites, it's given to part Hittites too, and then the part Hittites could say, maybe we have some stake in the land. So Isaac sent for Jacob and blessed him, and he instructed him, blah, 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 go to the other land and move yourself off, and off he went. Now go to verse number 6. It's another one of these poignant things. You got verse 6 on page 161. Okay, it says, when Esau saw that Isaac had blessed Jacob and sent him to Padan Aram to take a wife from there, charging him as he blessed him, "You shall not take a wife from among the Canaanite women." So here Isaac is being assertive, but he's only being assertive because Rebecca told him to. And it says, and that Jacob had obeyed his father and mother and gone to Padan Aram. Esau realized that the Canaanite women displeased his father Isaac. So what does he do? Esau then goes to Ishmael and took to wife, in addition to the wives he had, the daughter of Ishmael, son of Abraham, sister of Noah. He so much wanted to please his parents, so much wanted to do the right things. He realized that the woman he had taken before was not the right woman, wasn't somebody they wanted, so he married the closest woman he could find who was part of the family, who was somebody from Ishmael. So he never gave up trying to please mom and dad.
But it was the wrong side of the family that he took her from.
Right, but it was as close as he could get.
But you wonder, knowing a little bit about Rebecca and how manipulative she is, if she only brought up the idea of this
Right.
Hittite woman to validate why she manipulated Isaac.
Now, clearly the whole thing was a ruse. I mean, not entirely. That was a primary purpose and secondary purpose. Primary purpose was to explain why Jacob had to leave.
Yeah, that's.
And all right, and the secondary one was they really did want him to marry again, there was no Jewish then, but marry a good Jewish girl and find the right good Jewish girl.
It's really very
Right,
interesting.
right. It's
Look through
and
that.
and also kind of like saying, well, he should have the birthright because he's going to marry the right girl, and not one of these. If you gave the birthright to Esau, and all my grandchildren are Hittites, I mean, what good is that?
Mhm.
You're giving away
Right.
the good birthright.
You're giving away the farm, literally.
Right.
All right, so let me tell you what we're going to do next week. Next week we're going to, like I told you, take a look at the latter part of the Tanakh. So we're going to look at some of the wisdom literature, Kohelet and Mishlei, and see if there's anything else, anyplace else that talks about parenting issues. And then we're going to look at probably one of the most dysfunctional fathers in the entire Tanakh. We're going to look at King David and David's relationship with his children.
And his wives and
Neighbors.
and his wives' husbands.
Before they're his wife.
Right.
Yeah, so we're not
Let's
gonna,
put
we're
your
not
wives'
gonna
husbands.
deal so much, I don't plan at all to deal with the whole Bathsheba incident. I'll deal with Bathsheba and David after she becomes his wife, but not that whole incident. So I'll be selective. Please, next week, if you can bring a Tanakh with you, that would be great. Because we're not gonna do anything from the Chumash next week.
What do you need?
Bible.
A Bible?
A Bible.
Like this.
Yeah.
You think you got one when you had a consecration?
We have some
I think they gave us
The
one early
rabbi,
Hebrew high school.
yeah, the rabbi said he ordered
the
a couple
kids.
more, but he
The
didn't.
kids
He
for
didn't
sure
say.
got
I think I saw one the other
Last year I
day.
took
I'm pretty sure I got
Rabbi
one or
Belsky.
12 or
We
15.
get
Okay.
I think
So if
that
you
they
can,
might have
if I
gotten
can
them.
make that your
I'll tell you, they
responsibility to
might
make
have
sure there's a
gotten
couple of
them.
extra, that would be great.
Yeah, I think.
Did you take Malcolm?
Okay. So are you are you both long-term members?
He's longer,
He's what?
longer term than I am.
I just saw the sanctuary. It looks really nice.
Dina.
Oh, that's right. I haven't seen it since.
Dina
the-
Cower did a magnificent job with it.
What's here?
I mean, it's the same sanctuary, but it's different. It's really nice.
The layout's just basically the same, but the colors and everything is just right. Come on our Shabbos. Okay, and just see what the ceiling does and with the different lighting and from the sun, just beautiful.
Any rate, have a great week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I hope this was what you expected it would be.
Wow.
She's coming along. She was originally thinking of doing this.
No, it just,
She's-
it was a good, like, I just know that in February, when somebody offers a class at 7:30, I'm gonna go. Oh, I just got home.
yeah. Okay, so,
And Monday night is my minion night, so it really,
okay.
just leave the house at 6:30 in the morning and
That's
show
it,
up
huh?
at 9.
They've never been here, so-
Yeah, I've always had,
Okay.
Mondays always seems to work for us for
Okay.
classes.
Do you go in the morning sometimes?
Monday night.
Yeah, Monday.